This is an exciting day for me and the Miami Dolphins to be able to formally introduce Anthony Weaver as the defensive coordinator. And the whole process of it was real cool for me because it started as the person and who our team would or who could have the biggest impact as a person, and then in the process got to get down to some nitty gritty on some schematic football side of it that really allows us to build on what we've been good at and continue forward in 2024, which is what we're all focused on. So without further ado, Anthony Weaver. Good luck following that.
Good afternoon, everybody. How we doing? Hey, how we doing, man? Familiar face.
Can you guys introduce yourself?
Okay. Omar Kelly from fondest.com. I wanted to know, what do you think your experience as a former player adds to the dimension as a defensive coach and just a coach in general?
I think that's been a huge asset to me just in general throughout my coaching career. Not necessarily for the ups of what I did while I played, but more just the hardships and adversity that I face, because I can help coach guys through that so that they can persevere and ultimately, hopefully, be better than I was at those same situations. So that is probably the biggest asset for me in terms of like my playing career, just having the ability to coach guys through those adverse situations.
Daniel, if we see Miami Herald.
Nice to meet you, Dan.
I know a lot of people are wondering, you spent the past couple of years in Baltimore, you have experience in DC and Houston, but in terms of the scheme that you're planning to bring to Miami, what do you foresee that? Do you think you're maybe bound to one particular scheme, or how do you plan to approach that?
Yeah, I think the scheme that we use in Baltimore is actually extremely multiple and flexible. And the foundation of what we're going to do here will be from that. But the beauty in that is a lot of the things that they've already done here that they've had success in, we're very similar there. So there should be a lot of crossover teaching. But I think in this league, it's hard to just pigeonhole yourself as one particular thing, because you're going to face different situations throughout the entire year, whether it's weather, injuries, there's a multitude of factors. And your scheme better be flexible enough to, one, adapt to the players and adapt to whatever situation you may be in. So,
Anthony, Hal Habib with the Palm Beach Post. Good to meet you. Welcome.
Thank you.
My question might make you look at me like I have three heads, but
So it's like I'm talking to my wife all the time, then.
but I read somewhere, and correct me if this is totally wrong, that you have had a home in Fort Lauderdale for a long time?
Yeah, I have, since 2009.
Why?
So obviously it's a beautiful part of the country to be in. I'm from upstate New York, so to come down to the sun, the beach, and all that stuff is obviously incredible. Like you want to be down here. It's awesome. And my wife and kids, they love it too. So we bought this place in '09. My wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, helped me find the place, and we kind of grew into it. Now, it certainly won't fit us all now because we didn't have two kids when we first bought the place. So we'll be selling it. But we've always loved it down here, man. It's a tremendous community.
Anthony, Adam Beasley, Pro Football Network.
Yeah.
Who would you say is your greatest influence on what you believe in your fundamentals as a defensive coach?
Yeah, I have a couple. The first one is Romeo Crennel, right? He is a guy that obviously was very detailed in terms of techniques and fundamentals and what he expected from the guys. But more importantly, off the field, like he was extremely calm in the chaos, right? There's a lot of ups and downs throughout the NFL season. You have some guys that ride the roller coaster. I don't believe that, right? I think when you do that, your players are going to react the same way. So I try very much to be the same guy every single day, and I really don't have to try. It's truly just who I am, right? And then just constantly making sure we're trying to get 1% better, which requires 100% effort every day. But I think as long as you're on that constant chase to get better, eventually you'll get to where you want to go. But my first is Romeo Crennel. The second one has to be John Harbaugh, right? In my short 3 years with him, I just saw how he walked and operated and constantly kept the pulse of the team. And when he got up and addressed the team, he always had something particular in mind and was very direct, right, in what he was trying to get done. And I have so much respect for how he walks and operates. It was much different than any coach I'd been around prior, and really confirmed what I was doing to myself. Because I was like, this is how I envisioned myself operating, and obviously it works, and you can have success doing it.
Hey Anthony, David Ferronis of South Florida Sun Sentinel. What is at the core of your overall philosophy as a leader, as a coach, as a teacher?
Yeah, man, I think of coaching as like service work, right? And I ascribe to the thought that if you work in service, you should never get nervous, right? And when I got into this coaching profession in 2010, in my mind I was like, all right, I'm going to get in this because this game has been so good to me, and this is my opportunity to pay it forward. So whatever has happened as a result of that has truly been in just me trying to make sure that I can be a force multiplier with whoever that is around me. So every player, every coach, anybody, whether they're in the cafeteria, right, within in communications and PR, like I want to be in service to them and make sure they get my absolute best every single day.
Anthony, Mike Cunio, CBS News Miami, how you doing? When you look at the roster on defense, what maybe unit or player maybe excites you the most about getting to coach?
Yeah, there's a guy there's probably multiple guys on every level of defense that you can get excited about, right? Up front, you got the Zach Sealers, Jalen Phillips, right? Bradley Chubb, Christian Wilkins, right? Gotta love watching him. David Long at the linebacker position. Javon Holland, who's an absolute beast and playmaker out there running around, and Jaylen Ramey, right? So on every level of defense, there's somebody that you get excited about watching. And I know there's guys I failed to mention. I apologize to all of them. But the opportunity to come here, obviously, with a team that's had the success they had, how do you pass on that, right? Mike and that offense, they're going to put up points, right? That's definitely going to happen. And it's our job to make sure that we give up less points to the other team. And we plan on doing that every time we get out there.
Anthony Allen Poupar with alldolphins.com. What was the biggest lesson you took from your first stint as DC with Houston in 2020?
Yeah. One, try not to take a job when there's going to be a worldwide pandemic. All right, first. Two, like problems are gifts. Like with all the adversity that we dealt with throughout that season, although we didn't get the results on the field we wanted, I felt like that unit as a whole always stayed together and fought their butts off till the bitter end. So I take a tremendous amount of pride in that. Now, what did I learn? I learned, one, problems are gifts. Two, you better be multiple enough in your scheme, like I talked about earlier, to handle whatever situation arises. Whether that's injury, COVID, whatever that may be, you better make sure that you have answers schematically.
You mentioned Christian Wilkins. It was one of the conditions. I'm only taking the job of Christian Wilkins.
I love coaching good players, and obviously he is one of them. So have a tremendous amount of respect for him. Know that he's positioned himself, obviously, for a huge payday. And as an ex-player, I completely understand the business of the league. So love Christian, right? Would love to have him. But, man, we'll see.
You've now played in a different era, and you're coaching in this unique era.
Yeah.
How would you compare this era of players to what you played in?
Well, they make a lot more money with the NIL, first and foremost. You may not see me if I made that NIL money back then. But I think overall, the players are the same, right? You hear guys saying like, this decade players or whatever, they're soft, all this stuff with social media. The players are the same. They want to be coached hard, and they want to be loved up, right? And that's what I believe in. I believe you coach them hard and love them up, man. And usually when you do that, they tend to respond for you.
Coach Travis Winkler from the Miami Dolphins here. So problems are gifts.
Yeah.
As an adage of yours, have you heard of adversity as an opportunity yet around the building?
I have not heard that one yet.
Those sound very similar.
Now, most of the coaches have been off, so.
So my question is, because Coach talked about the person starting with you first, I'm curious about your experience on that side of coming in here and meeting McDaniel and the staff and just your experience with getting to know the guys.
Yeah, so I've known Mike since 2006. I mean, he was a QC in Houston when I played there. And who you guys see on a week-to-week basis is who he has always been. I had a tremendous amount of respect when I played not under him directly, but I just saw his work ethic as a veteran player at that particular point. And then when I had the opportunity to coach with him in Cleveland, I was like, oh, he's special. It took the rest of the world a little bit longer to see that than I did. Some other head coaches along the way, I tried to get them to hire Mike, wouldn't listen, and hey, to their detriment, right? But from a coaching standpoint, philosophically, we believe in the same things. We believe it. I'm going to go back. So do you guys remember Clarence Brooks? All right, Clarence Brooks, he coached here defensive line back early 2000s, something like that. He's since passed, all right, rest in peace. But Clarence used to say this game has been and always will be about the players. And I believe that wholeheartedly. And as an ex-player, I know how finite this career is. And because of that, I take my responsibility in a leadership position as a defensive coordinator extremely, extremely important. And I don't want to waste anybody's very finite time in this league. So because of that, man, like, we want to be great in all that we do.
What is your overall philosophy at this present day on the blitz? How often to use it, when to use it?
Yeah, I mean, blitzing is truly like, it's got to be calculated and not reckless. I've been around both guys, right? I've been around guys that just call it and let's see what happens. Let's throw flies in the windshield and see what sticks. All right, and then I've been guys that have been more calculated than that. And I believe you have to be calculated, not reckless in blitzing, because when you do blitz, you're obviously leaving your undercoverage and secondary vulnerable. So whenever we do blitz, it'll be with intent.
What are some of your fondest memories as a player?
Oof, that's a good one. So probably my most fondest memory, all right, didn't come in the National Football League. Actually happened at the University of Notre Dame. I was a 18-year-old freshman, right? It was my first game, and I was fortunate enough to start and that was truly a product. So you talk about like great coaching. Had an incredible coach in high school, Blaise Giuliano, right? He played defensive end in the Canadian Football League. So going into Notre Dame, my technique and fundamentals were leaps and bounds of most freshmen walking into that particular point. So you've talked to me about stressing the importance of technique and fundamentals. It started there. I learned that early. But that first game, we're playing the University of Michigan. It just won the national championship. All right, they had a tackle who was a preseason All-American named John Jansen. All right, so I'm starting this game, 18 years old, like you can imagine, like butterflies in my stomach. Like I'm surprised. I'm just glad we weren't wearing white pants. Let's say that, okay? But the first half, right? I am lined up like a yard off the ball because I was so scared of my coach yelling at me for being offsides, okay? But the second half, I forced a fumble, okay? And we end up winning the game against the national championships, and our entire student section rushes the field. So I just think every game's going to be like that, right? Wasn't, obviously, but that memory will be forever sketched in my mind.
And how important is it for you to get those memories for the players that you're going to be in charge of?
It's everything. Ultimately, like, yeah, you get paid a king's ransom to play this game, and I think everybody involved in this business knows that, but I've never seen like a U-Haul behind a hearse, right? So at the end of the day, like we're not dying with our money, all right? But when we're sitting there, hopefully you have some incredible memories to look back on and cherish. And that's what I'd love to create here with Mike and the team.
Some other assistants have been hired on defense. Can you tell us what you like about each, whether it's Joe Barry, Ryan Crow, Brian Duker?
So Joe Barry obviously is a tremendous football coach, right? Most recently the defensive coordinator of the Green Bay Packers. Back in 21, when I left Houston, me and Joe spent a lot of time conversating about the potential of joining up with the Chargers under Brandon Staley. That didn't come to fruition, but through those conversations, we formed a friendship. And over the years, like we've always kind of kept in touch. And then through mutual friends, I've obviously heard just nothing but incredible things about him. So to add him to our staff with his wisdom and intellect and knowledge is a tremendous like win for us as a team, and then for me individually, right? As a guy that's just been in it most recently calling it. Brian Duker, who we just hired as pass game coordinator, we worked together in Cleveland in 2014 and 15, and then he has familiarity with the scheme that we want to run because he was with Wink Martindale in Baltimore for a number of years as well. So, and I think he's just tremendous football mind, young kind of up and coming coach, has great ideas, and obviously you see his team with Detroit, they just lost an NFC Championship game, right? So does a tremendous job there. I think it was a huge opportunity to get him. Ryan Crow, right? Ryan Crow, you look at Tennessee's outside backers, okay? Harold Landry, I can't even remember who else is out there, but all they did was produce and get after the quarterbacks and sent dominant edges, which is exactly what we want to do here, all right, at the outside backer position. But to that being said, I do think Ryan Slowick did an awesome job doing that a year ago with the outside backers. I view Ryan as a tremendous asset because he's coached on every level of the defense. So when you have that guy, I mean, and one, he's incredibly selfless, right? So he's actually going to help us in the secondary as well. And really look forward to working with Ryan and trust his just football acumen in general. And then the last guy I think we added so far is Deshaun Sheed, who played corner, all right, played behind Richard Sherman in Seattle, all right, won a championship, has since been in coaching, and shoot, I mean, you look at Seattle and what they've done there, particularly at the DB position. I mean, there's a lot of good ones. And I feel like when you talk to him, you can just feel the impact that he's had on them. So he's a younger guy, he's got all the energy, and he can relate. You talk about like ex-players being able to relate to current players and being out there talking from a vantage point of, I've done this, here's how you can help yourself, right? He obviously provides that too. So excited about everybody, man. And most importantly, to me, they're all incredible football minds, but more importantly, they're good people, right? And when you're in the midst of a season, right? The season is long and arduous for a reason, right? You gotta be tenacious because it exposes the frauds. And when you get to week 13, 14, 15, 16, you better have guys you want to be in the foxhole with. And I believe everyone on this staff and everyone we've hired to this point are those guys.
You mentioned Ryan Sloak. Is he staying on, and do you know in what role yet?
Yeah, he's certainly staying on. He is a very valued asset for us. He is going to be helping us in the secondary. What his exact title is, I'll let Mike talk to you about that. We're still working through it, but love Ryan, man, and the conversations I've had with him so far, he is juiced about it. He's excited.
Are you an upstairs or a downstairs type guy?
I'm a downstairs guy, man. I need to feel right what's going on in the game, feel how the players are reacting to the situation, and hopefully be a positive influence in whatever reaction that is. So I don't think you can have that same effect from up in the booth.
What did you experience interviewing for head coaching jobs teach you about the process and then teach you about yourself?
Well, I think about the process, I thought like, oh, this is it? Like in my mind, I've been around this game now for a long time. And if I can't talk about football, like what in the world could I possibly talk about? So that process in itself, like, hey, grateful for the opportunity. It certainly is not like my be-all end goal. I want one thing, selfishly, to win a championship. That's it. Whatever else happens after that will happen as a byproduct of my service to the team and the players.
How will analytics inform the decisions you make throughout the course of the game?
At this point in time, like I think you're a fool not to listen to some of the analytical data. And there's so much positive uses of it. Some of it needs to be filtered, absolutely. But if you're not at this point in time, like you're behind. And we certainly want to make sure we're staying ahead of the trends.
Anthony, Adam earlier asked you about your favorite memory as a player.
Mm-hmm.
The natural offshoot of that is what's your favorite memory as a coach?
Oh, man. There's a lot of them there. My favorite memory as a coach. It's funny because a lot of them happened this past year, right? In Baltimore, we had a special group that I thought was really committed to one another, disciplined, loved each other. I think it was a love a genuine mutual care for one another that was often transcending, right? Where we won games that just purely off of they didn't want to let each other down, right? And ultimately, that's what you're building towards. Did we fall short of our goal? Yes. But in terms of memories, when Tylen Wallace, all right, when he returned that punt return in overtime versus the Rams, I tell you what, I ran around and celebrated so much. First thing I realized, I need to do more cardio because I was exhausted, okay? But just that childlike exuberance, like I'm 43 years old. Like when does that happen? Like I'm not like Brett Favre and friggin' Drew Brees where I have like 20 friends I can put on my Wranglers and go play football. Like that doesn't happen, right, in real life. So to have that experience and just knowing what that kid had gone through, right? His first year he was hurt in and out. Second year hurt in and out, where people start to like question, like, is this guy a player? And to have him have that moment in that situation was awesome.
What do you envision you can do with a guy like Jaylen Ramey?
I mean, it's Jaylen Ramey. I mean, come on now. Like, you talk about prototype corners. He is that, right? Size, length, speed, competitiveness. The thing about him is I think he's your ultimate chess piece. So to have him just sit outside and, be a field corner or boundary corner or something like that, I think is a detriment to him. We got to find ways to move him around where he can be most impactful. And we're committed to doing that.
What's it like knowing that Well, you don't have to worry about Tyreek Hill on Sundays. You have to worry about him Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
Yeah, you know, I'm going to tell him to make sure he's rested for Sunday. All right, first and foremost. But as a competitor, you want to face the best every day, and ultimately, you're just going to be better as a result. So, all of our guys in the secondary, they should be excited and up for the challenge, and know that they're never going to face anybody faster come Sunday.
I want to ask you a little bit about the Ravens' mentality process. I've always admired how they play, just a physical, in your face, and I know that comes a lot from Harbaugh. But how do you build that brand of defense?
Yeah, I think the one thing about that place, right, and it probably started a long time ago with Ray Lewis and that squad. And then every single person that stepped in that building since tries to live up to that standard. So that probably has a lot to do with it. From a scouting standpoint, and you know, ultimately I think it's the same thing here. You want to make sure you get guys that have high football character, right? And I believe for the most part we have that here. When you watch the film, these guys play hard, right? Snap and I mean, I saw Bradley Chubb like run down against Denver like 30 yards down the field and force a fumble. Like big guys don't do that. So the effort level, the want to is here. I think taking that next step to being recognized as how the Ravens play is just doing it for the long term, okay? But I think the foundational pieces you want to in terms of just like internal, like just grit and grind, like our guys have that. Our guys have that. We just make sure we're doing it down in and down out for multiple seasons.
You mentioned Phillips and Chubb. Have you been able to interact with them since you've gotten the job, and how are they doing in their rehab?
Yeah, I don't want to talk about like medical situations or anything like that. I'm not a doctor. I have spoken to both of them. Obviously, extremely excited to be around them. They're tremendous players and coaches. I mean, tremendous players and better people. And I tell you what, I saw Jalen Phillips the other day, and he had his shirt off, and I almost went and put a sweater on because dude is like, I mean, he is chiseled, right? Like, oh my goodness. But man, just super excited. They have, you know, just great personalities. Like they're people you want to be around. You could tell they're going to make everybody around them better by just being out there.
This could be a little bit vague here. What's your approach or philosophy on player development?
Yeah, I think you need to be grounded in your technique and fundamentals. It starts there. So every coach that's on staff certainly believes in that. And the guys that have been here, you see that with their guys on tape. Once you're sound there, that allows you to unleash whatever God-given ability you have. Without it, like sometimes you can just be flailing around a little bit. I call it like it's like the story of the prodigal son, right? He leaves, things get awry, comes back home, and your dad's just sitting there with open arms. Your technique and fundamentals are the same way. Like if you go awry from it, like things can get crazy. All right, come back to your technique and fundamentals. It'll be sitting there in open arms, and things will get right.